Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 205 of Build Your Stash and Craft. La Margot requested that I show how to make a tassel maker, and these are very simple to make. So I just wanted to, that's what we're going to do this week, and they are a fun thing. She had seen the Clover Tassel Maker, and I did go and look at their tassel maker. I have made these before. But they had some really good also like ideas on how to do things, so I'll show you that too. But so what we're going to do is we're going to make some tassel makers. What I did before we started was I just went ahead and glued two pieces of cardboard together. I glued the cardboard side together so that it would be a nice solid glue, because when you glue something shiny, it doesn't necessarily always stick real well. I just glued it with just regular glue. And if you want to glue it so that your cardboard is on the outside so it looks nicer, or if you want to decorate this up later, just take a piece of sandpaper and just knock that shine off. You don't have to remove all of the picture, but if you knock the shine off, then your glue will stick better and you'll have more of a solid piece. So I just have, and if you have a thick piece of cardboard, you don't even have to do this, but this was just really thin. I didn't have any thick cardboard. And so I just glued two pieces together. So what I did for this one, size-wise, is, okay, this is 3.5 inches wide and 4.5 inches long. So now what I'm going to do is this is going to be the way that we're going to make our tassel maker. And so it's 4.5 inches, and it will make a 4-inch tassel, because once you get your tassel all made, you'll need to trim the bottom. So you make whatever, this is going to be a 4-inch tassel, and so it's 4.5 inches long. If you want a 5-inch tassel, make it 5.5 inches long. Whatever size you want your tassel, you make it 1/2 inch longer, and that gives you that 1/2 inch to trim and get a nice straight edge. So, and it doesn't matter how wide this is. We're going to also do one that is, this is 3.5 inches long. So it will make a 3-inch tassel. And it is 2.25 inches wide about. So, and that was just, this was the front and back of this box. And these came off of the side of the box. And so out of this box, I'll wind up with 2 tassel makers. Alrighty, so we'll do our 4-inch one first. So what we're going to do, because we don't need a huge amount of space here, is we are just going to mark our spot to cut so that we have our hole in the middle. I am going to leave at the top, I'm going to leave about 2 widths. No, just 1 width. I'm going to leave 1 width of my ruler, which is 1 1/8 inches. Okay, so there is no exact amount. It's just easy to put it up there nice and straight, and then just draw your line. And so I'm going to do that on both of them. And that part, I will just leave it like it is and not cut it. And then I want to put our gap in the middle. And again, I'm going to leave my edges, fairly wide. We don't need a huge gap in the middle. You can make it any size that you want to. Okay, so this is 3.5 inches wide. So if I come in 1 inch on each side, that will leave me a 2.5 inch gap, and I'll have 1 inch on both sides. So we're just going to do that again. 1 inch on there and 2.5 over here. Since it's 3.5 inches wide, we want to come in 1 inch from the outside edge. And then I'm going to do it one more time. 1 inch and 2.5 inches. And then I am just going to mark the line for, I'm leaving my 1 inch spot up there. So I'm going to go from that line down and do the same thing on this side. Now you don't have to be super particular. If you just want to cut out a center, that works too. Okay, and so then we're just going to cut right on that line, stopping when we get to our top section there. And because I find it very hard to try and cut, to turn and cut, because I don't want to make this all real soft, I am going to use my knife. Oops, I should have brought my cutting board, but I didn't. So I'm going to wind up cutting my paper, but I'll just not cut too hard. And I'm just going to line that up with the line. And just cut right across here so that we're cutting that little piece out. And there we go. So now we have something that looks like this. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to line these up. And I'm going to line them up that way because I did not trim them down. I could have trimmed them both to exactly the same size, but I forgot. So I'm going to just trim that off of there so they're both exactly the same size. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold that there because I did measure it. These two are both the same size, so when I turn it around when I'm done, they are going to fit together and line up nicely. So now I'm just going to cut that out there. Now, if you don't have a razor knife and you do have to cut that top portion without messing up your cardboard too much and putting lots of like wrinkles, which make soft spots in your cardboard, the way that you can do it is cross over from just anywhere on this side up to that point, and then do the same here like that, because it gives you more room to get your scissors in there. And then, you know, what I do is then I just kind of go in, trying not to bend this too much. So I'm just going to kind of go about halfway here, get up to that line, and then turn my scissors like that. Because that way I did bend this, but that's okay because I'm cutting that off. Just going to come in from this side and cut that piece off. So you don't have to have the knife. You can go in and do it that way without making a mess of your cardboard also. So let's get these out of the way. Now this is our tassel maker. So the question is, how are we going to hook it together? You've got an option. You can either just glue it together just like this. Oops, not like that, I'm sorry. Like this. Just glue it together, stick it underneath of a hard book, and let it dry. You can poke a couple holes in here and put a brad through it. And if you want to, you can poke a hole here and here, measure them so that you can move it like a 1/2 inch at a time. So that would make it from 4.5 inches to 5 inches. And then another 1/2 inch would make it from 5 inches to 5.5 inches. So you could actually make it extend a few times and still be solid. I prefer, so I don't have to mess with moving, you know, the brads or anything like that. I prefer to glue it together nice and solid and stick it under a hard book. That makes it really nice and secure. And what it also does is that, well, it doesn't do anything else. It just makes it nice and solid and easy to use. But then what I do is I just make different ones. This one, I am just going to mark that this one is a 4-inch tassel. Because I know that because I made it 4.5 inches long. And so this one is going to be a 3-inch tassel because I made it 3.5 inches long. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. But am I going to make my sides 1 inch wide? Well, I'm not going to because that would take up all of my space practically. So on this one, I'm just going to make the sides maybe about a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch. Let's see. And why did I make this one like this? Because that was a size box I had. You don't have to have anything particular. You can make them any size that you want. So that is 2 1/4. It's about 2 1/4 wide. Yeah, 2 1/4. So if I make it a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch, that would leave me with 1 1/4 inch space in the middle. That would be okay. So I'm going to come in here and do a 1/2 inch. And easier for me to just move it this way and hit the 1/2 inch mark. And a 1/2 inch. A 1/2 inch. And one more time. Whenever you measure anything, if you measure it 3 times, you're much more likely to have a good line and not have a mistake. Because if you do 2 lines, sometimes what happens is you put a mark off just a little bit, and then you just draw a straight line between those 2 lines, and you don't realize that the line that you drew was crooked because you didn't mark both of them exactly the same. So if you do 3, it gives you a little bit of a better line. Alrighty, and then let's see how big is my hole here. I'm gonna not make this, yes, I'm still gonna make this top this wide. It will make our hole just a little bit smaller because this is only 3 1/2 inches long to make a 3-inch tassel. So we'll cut that out. And then just use our knife to cut across between the 2 lines. Whoops, that wasn't good. I let it move. And there we go. And we'll just go ahead and draw it on here. And cut this one out. And then we will do this the same as the other one. And the one thing that I am going to do before I glue it together is take a piece of our sandpaper that we got for this series, or if you don't have any sandpaper, a nail file will work just fine because that's just sandpaper. If you don't have a nail file, you can just rough it up with your knife here or with your scissors. You just want to have something for the glue to grab onto. And since we're going to glue them together, we want to make sure that that glue actually gets a nice good hold. So there we go. And this is going to go together just like that. Okay, now I'll show you what I was talking about. You either want to sand all of this, or if you don't have any sandpaper, just take your knife and just carefully rough it up on the sides that you are going to glue together. Now this box has glue here where the box was glued together. That does need to come off because otherwise you won't get a nice flat surface for the two to hold on to each other. and it will just, you won't get as good of a hold. So just do this, and then I'm going to go through and just kind of cross hatch it and go the other way. And that will give my glue some place to hold on and something to hold on to versus just the slickness of the paint that's on this cardboard. Just like that. And then do the other side of this one. And then when you glue, oh, I didn't think about it. I didn't have to do this part because I'm not gluing right there. Just have to do just the long sides. Just here, from there to there, and from there to there. Like that. This one I will do better, but because this part is not going to get covered up, it's not going to get glue on it, so we don't need to do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go sand this one. I'm going to glue them, stick them under a hard book, and then I'll be back and we'll use them. Okay, I am back. And when I gave you the measurements and I told you that this one was 4.5 inches so that it would make a 4-inch tassel, I lied. So what I was asked to do was to kind of figure out how to replicate the Clover Tassel maker. And the way that I always used to make tassels was I would wrap my yarn around a cardboard or whatever, and then I would cut it across the bottom. And then, of course, you would straighten it up. That would make a 4-inch tassel. Like I did make this. This was a little extra piece, so I made a little tiny extra one, and that's exactly what I did. I wrapped my tassel around and around, and I tied it, or I cut it across the bottom, and then tied it at the top. And this is what I wound up with. This is the way that I've always done it, by just wrapping it around the cardboard. And when I get it about as thick as I think I want it, I just cut it across the bottom and then tie it up at the top. Well, the first thing I do before I cut it is I put a piece of thread through the top, wrap it, put a piece of thread through the top and tie it. Then you cut the bottom, and then it's all stuck together, and then you wrap this piece here. So this is how I have always made them, and that's where I was thinking that it was going to be as long as the cardboard. But with the Clover Tassel maker, what I forgot was they tie it in the middle. So that means that this 4.5-inch cardboard will make a 2.25-inch tassel, or a 2-inch tassel by the time that you trim it off. And so that's what I actually have here. This one I did like the Clover Tassel maker, wrapped the whole thing, tied it in the middle, and then you cut both ends. And so when you take it off, it only winds up being where you tied it. It's going to fold over. Couple things to remember. Number one, however much you wrap around there, if you're going to wrap it and just tie it and cut it, then that's how thick it's going to be. But if you're going to wrap it and then tie it in the middle and fold it in half, it's going to be twice as thick as what you've wrapped on here. So this one that I made is a very, very, very fat little tassel, because it's twice as fat as what I wrapped, and I was thinking it was only going to be as fat as what I wrapped. So we're going to make sense of this in a minute, but I did want to tell you that whatever the length of your where you make them exactly how we made them, but whatever the length is, your tassel will be half that length, half that size. So 4.5 is going to make a 2.25-inch tassel. And this one was 3.5, I think. Yep, that one was 3.5. So that one is going to make about 1.25 inch tassel. And again, probably 1 inch tassel by the time you trim it, and a 2-inch tassel by the time you trim it. So these are still definitely workable. A 1-inch tassel is a good size tassel. A 2-inch tassel is a good size tassel. And this little tiny one would be like a 1/2-inch tassel. I don't really think that I would use that, but maybe I would with some really thin thread if I wanted a little tiny tassel, and then tie it in the middle, but my tassel would only be that large. So I'm going to set these aside for a second, because I made another one after I got to thinking of that. And so this one, I just took I found a piece of cardboard that I had in with my saved cardboard, And this is 8 inches long. And so it was an 8-inch piece of cardboard. I just cut it in half and then made it exactly the way that we made these. Cut it in half, cut a U out of each piece, put them together, you know, side to side like this, glued them and let them dry. So this is 8 inches long. Then what I did was, no matter which ones they are, this one is 4 1/2, so I marked the center as 2 1/4. This one is 3 1/2, so the center of this one would be 1 1/2 plus 1/4 would be 1 3/4. So I would just mark this one. I have to find my 3/4 mark. There's the half. There's the quarter. Is that right? 2, 3, 4. Yep, that's the quarter mark right there. So I just put a mark on each side and then just draw across. And then you know where your center mark is. You want to know where your center mark is because that's where you're going to tie it at. So there we go. So we make our tassels just like that. We mark the center like that so we know where to tie them. And then, now they put theirs like over on the side. I prefer to just hook it at the bottom. So I'm just going to put a slice at the bottom on each side. Oops, I'm getting a low battery here. And so that's going to hold my thread so that my yarn, so I don't have to, oops, I just dropped my ball of yarn. Okay, so I don't have to hold on to it. We're just going to slide that right in there. And then you're just going to wrap it. Now remember that it's going to get twice as thick as however, I got black marker on my hand now. However much you wrap here, it's going to be twice as thick. So we'll just do it like, let's say, maybe 10 times. 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to wrap it all the way across, kind of look at it and see what I think. Okay, so I've got this much. There's this much, and I have to remember when I fold that over, it will be twice that thick. So maybe just do like just a couple more. And you can, if you want it super thick, just wrap it right on top of itself. You don't have to wrap it just next to itself. Now that I'm back to the bottom, I'm just going to slide that right up in there to hold it. And there we go. Alrighty, so now we've got the start of our tassel. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tie it in the middle. And we do want to make sure that we grab this thread, which is here, and this one, which is here. So when we tie it, we're going to push this one over with the rest and push this one over with the rest before we tie it. Now, they made, they put their tassel in the middle. When I tied mine, I tie them at the top and then tie it tight at the top. And what you wind up with, and this is a really fuzzy yarn, so it's hard to see, but this is folded over and then it's tied together right there. The way that they did it was they made a tie and put a knot in it. I think I'll use this one. Now the one thing that I found out, I did it for this one and it came out the top. But see how this comes up and then like comes down like this? It's not actually just folded in half like this and tied here where you've got this here. It actually kind of like waterfalls over this way so you don't see like the fold in your yarn, if that makes sense. Here there's a fold and it just goes up and folds down and it's tied together, so you kind of see that. Here the whole thing comes up in waterfalls like this to cover up that fact. It's more of a bulb that way. So I'm going to show you how they did it and we'll see if it works, because like I said, this one pulled out. So what you're going to do is just make your loop and tie it. You want kind of a bigger knot in it because you don't want that knot to pull out the top. And then you also need to make sure you get it super tight as you're wrapping it. So I'm going to do a double knot in the same spot to try and make that knot pretty big, because I don't want that knot to pull through. Okay. And then just trim off the extra because I don't want that sticking out the edges of my tassel. All right, so then what they do is they take their loop with the big knot on it. You have your center here, and you're going to put the knot on one side of your center line and your loop on the other, so that when you tie it, it will be tied right here, and that way that will hold the knot in if you tie it tight enough. And so I'm going to tie it with a thinner yarn. This is the yarn I'm going to wrap it with also. So I'm just going to take a piece of yarn, and so now that you've got this, what you're going to do is you're going to hide this knot in the middle of your threads. And what I mean by that is you've got threads on this side and threads on this side. So if you, and you don't have to do this with the ruler, but I'm just kind of showing you. So I've got the half of the threads on each side. That knot is going to go pretty much in the middle of these, and then you're going to hide it underneath those. It's going to be under those and over top of the ones on the bottom. Now my knot's on this side of my yarn, of my line. My loop is on this side of my line, and I'm going to take my thread. Remember, we want to catch this one and the one on the other side, so we're just going to go right down there at the middle. We're going to come over here and make sure that we catch this one. So just push that one in towards the middle. Bring this up here. And I think I just moved my knot up. Not too bad. Okay, so now when I tied my knot, I just went ahead and I went like this, and I pulled tight and tried to hold it really tight and then do the next one to make a knot. The girl that showed how to tie hers, she wrapped it 3 or 4 times instead of just once. So she kind of went around and around and around and then pulled tight. So I'm hoping that that holds it tighter, and really, really pulled tight. Now also, she just might not have pulled tight on her, or pulled hard on a loop later, like I did when I pulled mine out. But pull that really, really tight. That's as tight as I can get it. And it does seem to kind of be holding there. Okay, so then I can put the next one in to really, really make it a knot. Pull that tight, and I'm going to do one more for good measure. And then we're just going to cut that off pretty short. All right, now we're going to cut our threads at both ends. On one end, you've got your lip, and then that's down there. If you flip it over, this side is all solid. So that's the side you want to slide your scissors in on. The side that's solid, just slide your scissors in there. Oh. And if you miss one, you go back and you cut it after you're done cutting, and you noticed you missed it. All right, so then you're just going to cut right at the bottom, just like that. You're going to come to the other end, cut it at the bottom, just like that. Take your extra little pieces out, and then you're going to pull this out. And now, instead of folding it over like this, which is, remember how I said if we tie it around the middle, then we wind up with this like 2 sides, because we put the loop through it beforehand, instead of folding it like that, when you pick it up, you're going to take this, your loop, and you're just going to kind of hold it here and separate all of these so that your loop is kind of coming up in the middle of them. And what happens is then they're draping over like that. And so see, now we don't have that tie spot because all of those ones draped over and this came up on the top. So now what I'm going to do, because I want to see, I tied that really, really, really tight. I mean, as tight as I could. I'm going to pull on this and see if it's going to come out. Because if it is, then all you do, because I do like the way this looks, the way that it drapes over the loop like that, Then what we would do is just put a little bit of glue on the knot, and let it sit for a little bit before you would pull on that. But I'm going to try kind of pulling on it. And it could pull out. So I think that I'm going to grab, oh, I do have some glue here. Good. I am going to put just a little bit of glue on that knot. And then hopefully it will just glue when it dries. It will glue to the strands in the middle. And then it won't pull out because you don't want to have it hanging on something and all of a sudden have the loop pull out and the tassel fall off. There. Alrighty, and then just hold that up and pull these down. Let them just drape down there. Kind of looks almost like a little bit like an octopus. And then you just smooth that down. Now our little tie one is sticking out there, so we can just give that a little bit of a trim to get it out of the way. And there we go. Now there is our tassel. And now we just have to make the head on the tassel. And so the way to do that is just have some yarn. I like to do my wraps in a different color. That's totally up to you. You can do it the same color as your tassel. But we're just going to, and if you watch one of their videos, she showed how to make some kind of an invisible knot. I didn't quite get it, and I wasn't sure too. It only looked like it was kind of like a single knot or something. I wasn't sure how well it would hold. So I'm going to just do it the way that I've always done it, which is just tie it. So I'm going to tie it where I want that head to be. Just need that out of my way. Kind of straighten all of my strings out. And decide how far down I want it. So I think maybe it should be, well, and we are going to have some wraps around it. I'm going to tie it right there because I kind of like that spot. So I'm just going to pull that tight and tie it one more time so it's a knot. Okay, now I'm going to leave this piece on here for a minute until we're all done wrapping it, because then I'm going to tie this piece to that piece when I'm done wrapping. And then you're just going to wrap the scarf, or whatever you want to call it, around your tassel. So you decide yourself exactly how big you want it to be, how tall, how long. And then I'm just going to go back down to the other end till I get to where that thread is. And I am going to tie a knot. 2 times. And give it a trim. If you trim it really, really short, put a little dab of glue on it, a glue that will dry clear so that you don't see it, and so that your knot does not unravel. I'm just going to cut that pretty short. And just put a little, well, I'll get that in a minute, but I'll put a little dab of glue right there. And so there we go. Now the only thing that we have left to do, but we have this nice little puffy top. I do like that little puffy top. So I do like the way that they put that in there. And then we're just going to take our tassel, and what they did was they took a piece of paper, wrapped it around there, and cut it across the bottom of the paper. You can do that. I usually just hold it together and give it a trim. Just like that. And there we go. So there we have a tassel with the whatchamacall coming right out of the middle of it. It's got the poofy little head, and I do think that they're really cute, and I do really like the way that they do them so that you wind up with this type of head on it. So that is the difference between doing it this way and then just doing it wrapped on a piece of cardboard. But their tassel maker is adjustable. To me, you can make a few of these and just have them. You know, you don't really need adjustable. A lot of times those adjustable things, they're plastic. You adjust them, you tighten them down, and eventually they break. So, you know, this is good. It's nice and sturdy. It's going to last quite a long time. Now, remember that this tassel is then going to be, well, okay, so that was 8 inches. That means it's a 4-inch tassel, plus it's been trimmed. So it's going to probably be a 3.5 or a 4. Well, no, it was 4, so it'd be like 3.5 or 3-inch tassel. So go from the top, and with how much I trimmed off, it's 3.25 inches long. So I really didn't need to trim that much off. This, you know, if I would have paid a little more attention, I could have trimmed off less. But also, you can trim off more. So you can really make it any length that you want it to with this. But if you don't want to waste yarn by trimming too much, just make a few of these. This one makes a 4-inch tassel. And I will know that it's 4 inches minus the trim. So I'm just going to put 4 inches minus. So I know when I'm done, it's a 4-inch tassel, and however much I trim off is going to make, that's how long my tassel will be. So anywhere's from 3 3/4, if I just trim a quarter, you know, to any size I want it to be. And so that way, we can do one more quick one on here. And actually, I think I'm going to stop right here because I think that my battery's going to go dead. So I will stop right here, and I'll come back, and we will make one more really quickly, just so we can do the knot thing again, and, you know, just have one more, and have one more of a different size. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, I am back, so we'll do this one more time. I made one with this size, and this is the one that's 3.5 inches. And it made this cute little tassel. So the yarns are a little bit thick for small tassels. The small tassels do better with something that's a little thinner, but this one still has the nice little head on top. And so that one was done exactly the same way. So I thought we'd do one more with this size. I wanted to show you. I made this one, and I was talking about how I just tie it and how it looks a little different. So I did go ahead and wrap this. And so all you do is any square of cardboard. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to have a hole in it or anything. You just wrap it as many times as you want, and then you just stick a string through either end, and then you just tie it nice and tight. You want to kind of try and hold on to that, just like that. And then what you'll do is this will be your hanging tassel, and so then you just tie that as long as you want it. And cut the tails off. And then all you do is you just go in across the bottom of the cardboard. I'm gonna untuck those. Just go in across the bottom. And give it a cut. And remember, I said if you don't get them all, just go back and grab them. Get those last two. And there we go. So now we have the tassel that looks like this with our thing on the top, and then we'll just tie it. Oops. Grab another piece of yarn here. Wherever we want our little top part to be. I have to try that, wrapping it 3 times again. 1, 2, 3. get it on there and keep it on there. And at this point, once you get it kind of tight, that's where you can make sure that you've got it kind of where you want it, and then give it a good pull. Like that. And then you would just wrap it around and tie the two strings together when you get as much of a wrap as you want. And you should put a double knot in that, but I'm just going to leave it like this for right now. So then this is what I was talking about, where now on the top you have your thing coming out the top, but it's also going through the sides. And so that looks, it looks like this then on the sides. Instead of having, and on the top it doesn't have that nice kind of like rollover all the way over the place. So that's the only difference between wrapping it around a square and doing it this way. So you know, I just kind of wanted to show you that that is another very easy way to do it, and they still look nice. And that's the only difference I see, is just the way that it looks right here. So that is that, and then you wind up with a tassel that's approximately the same size as whatever you wrapped it around. So we'll put this one, whoops, here, and then we'll do, I want to do another blue one because I don't really like the tie that I put on the top of this one. So I'm going to do another one just like that, but